Reported speech is a very important part of the English language because any time that the writer or speaker is in a past tense narrative, the only alternative to direct speech is going to be a reported form of that speech. And in formal documents, essays, reports and proposals, for example, direct speech is not allowed. So you need to learn how to report that speech. And basically, it's about transcribing the following list of forms into reported speech. We're looking at the changes that we need to make to tenses, to modal verbs, the use of pronouns and determiners, time and place, and then how to report questions, commands, and requests. Tenses. There is a general rule. You back tense. You go back one tense in time when reporting. So the present simple jumps back a tense to the past simple. James hates jazz, said Freddie, direct speech, becomes Freddie said James hated jazz. But in the case of the past perfect simple and the past perfect continuous, there is no further back to go, and so they will remain unchanged. Exceptions. You don't need to back tense if something is still true. He said that Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system. The direct speech version of that is, quote, Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system, end quote. No backtensing because it's still true. There's no backtensing when you're reporting a scientific or historical fact. James said Tesla invented AC electricity. That becomes James said Tesla invented AC electricity, not had invented. And as I already mentioned, when the direct speech verb is in the past perfect simple or past perfect continuous, there is no backtensing. Now modals and semimodals. There are many changes to them, but the following remain unchanged from direct to reported speech. Could, would, should, ought to, had better, and need, if they appear in direct speech, are not changed when they go into reported speech. The following are the changes from direct speech, which I'm labeling DS, to reported speech, RS. Will and shall become would. Can becomes could. Must becomes must. Had to, be to, or should. Have to becomes had to. Don't or doesn't have to becomes didn't have to. Mustn't becomes mustn't. Be not to or shouldn't. May becomes might. Am, is, and are going to become was and were going to. These are the changes from modals and semi-modals from direct speech in the white to reported speech in the red. Examples. So coach said, you must do what the teacher says. Direct speech becomes, the coach said we had to or were to or should do what the teacher said. The teacher said you mustn't cheat, and that becomes we were told that we mustn't, were not to, or shouldn't cheat. Pronouns and determiners next. My becomes his, her, or its. It's my turn. It was his or her turn. This plus a noun becomes the or that plus the noun. This new book becomes the new book or that new book. This plus a verb becomes it. This is a new book becomes it or that was a new book. These and those plus a noun become they. These new books become the new books or those new books. And a verb with these or those becomes them. Had these for ages. She had had them for ages. Pronouns and determiners. Time and place. These are just to be memorized. Here becomes there. Tomorrow becomes the following day or the next day or the day after. Tonight becomes that night. Yesterday, the day before or the previous day. Now or at the moment becomes then or at that moment. Next week, month, year becomes the following or the next week, month, year. And last week, month, year become the previous week, month, year, or the week, month, year before. Ago becomes before or previously or earlier. Reported questions. You need to know the difference between an open and a closed question because the translations are different. Open questions begin with what, who, which, when, where, why or how. Open because your answer can offer a variety of ideas. Closed questions begin with have, do, be or a modal. These are often called yes-no questions since the answer will be in the affirmative or negative and then the matter is closed. For closed questions, do you want to play football? Direct speech becomes he asked if or whether we wanted to play football. And please note, it's no longer in the question form. It's now a statement. An open question. What time did the film begin? Question becomes he asked what time the film had begun. Again, it's not in a question form any longer, it's in a statement form. Reported commands and requests. Here's the imperative. Put your books away, the teacher said. The teacher told us to put our books away. We've got an infinitive now. Would you raise your hand if you have a question? A request becomes the teacher asked me or us to raise my or our hand if I or we had a question. Back tensing. It's mostly memorization of different transcribing rules for the verb forms, the modals, the semi-modals, pronouns, determiners, times, places, questions, commands, and requests. As ever, practicing these forms will perfect them and actually produces quite a bit of a headache as well. You've got to stay with it because it's an essential form of the language, but it's mostly memorizing, using, and then using correctly in the most natural way possible.